Hey guys, Halina here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So, stay tuned. Hey guys, future me. Just saying, the recording was being really strange. It kept cutting out and ending and all that. So, this video is rather choppy, and I apologize for that. For some reason, the recording was being really, really stupid. So, the review, it's all here, just very choppy in parts. So, I hope you enjoyed the review. Now, on to it. Alright, so first I'm going to give my non-spoiler thoughts, so that way if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can hear what I thought without being spoiled. And then I'm going to dive into my spoiler thoughts. So, yeah, let's get to the non-spoilers. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings sees Shang-Chi living in San Francisco under the name Sean in hopes of remaining off his father's radar. But his past soon catches up to him, and he must work to stop his father and his criminal organization, the Ten Rings, from destroying the world. Now, this movie is a fun movie that, for the most part, doesn't quite feel like a Marvel movie, but, in a good way. There's world building in this movie that is very reminiscent of the world building done in Black Panther with Wakanda. But the story itself feels like Black Widow, with Shang-Chi hoping he finally left his past behind him, and then it comes back to bite him. I will talk more in depth about those comparisons in the spoiler section, but yeah, I would say that it is worth a watch at least once because, like I said, it's a fun movie. It's visually pleasing as well. So worth a watch at least once. Yeah. Now I'm going to be going into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go watch it. Come back here. Hear my thoughts on certain plot points and on certain characters. Yeah. Okay. So, right out of the gate, the balance between the flashbacks and present day was very well done. This is where I'm going to compare it to Black Widow, because Black Widow gave us very few flashbacks, which meant that we as the audience sort of had to fill in a lot of the blanks. We were told more than we were shown, and we were told the Red Room's training was ruthless. We assume that a lot of Natasha's pain tolerance that was shown throughout the movie and her time in the MCU, frankly, comes from her training in the Red Room. But, like I said, we got to assume. Whereas with Shang-Chi, and where it actually does it better, was we saw Shang-Chi going through the Ten Rings training, literally, being trained to fight, being trained to deal with the pain tolerance by literally, getting beaten with, I want to say sticks, but I don't think they're sticks. They have an actual name. I don't know what they're called. But, we basically saw the pain tolerance building up in Shang-Chi. So when he goes flying down the scaffolding, we know that he was able to get right back up and carry on in the fight because he was literally training from age 7. And we saw his training. So it made more sense in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings than it did in Black Widow. So that's a point for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. But speaking of the fighting, the fight choreography was absolutely stunning. It really separated it from the other Marvel movies fight scenes since it drew on Chinese fighting styles. Because one thing about typical Marvel movie action scenes, and really honestly any sort of action scenes is that they sort of just, they look cool in the moment, but they just sort of all blend together when you look at it as a whole. But because this movie's fight scenes are so different from your typical Marvel movie, from your typical action movie, they really stand out and they're more memorable because it's different. Like, so yeah, the fight choreography and everything like that, on point, stellar, loved it. Now it's time to compare Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings to Black Panther with the world building. So basically in Black Panther, we had to build and explain Wakanda. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings had to build and explain the world of Ta Lo and its mythical creatures. Now, I think using the narration at the beginning to give sort of a general idea of what Ta Lo is, like, it was good in that sense, but I felt like it wasn't really diving into Ta Lo that much. But then they use Shang-Chi and Xialing's aunt, Nan, to really dive into Ta Lo and its history as she's explaining it to Shang-Chi and Xialing. So that was really great to see. I think they could have done a little bit more details on the creatures. I wish that they had done that. But overall, like, seeing the creatures and hearing about Ta Lo really worked. So, yeah. But speaking of the mythical creatures, I just really wish that we had left the Dweller in the Darkness out of this movie entirely. Like, we could have set it up as part of the history of Ta Lo, but I think it should have stayed locked up. Like, I just think it would have been more impactful if we had seen Shang-Chi have to battle his father and sort of leave Wenwu as the villain of this movie rather than have him be a villain for most of the movie and then, save Shang-Chi from the Dweller in the Darkness and switch to the Dweller in the Darkness being the villain. Yeah, I mean, I just wish that we had left the Dweller in the Darkness for a Shang-Chi 2, which I am pretty sure we'll end up getting at some point. And just sort of left Wenwu as, the villain. Because really, once the Dweller in the Darkness came into play, I was like, okay, this is cool, but also, why? Yeah. Now, the use of Chinese and English throughout this movie. Now, I really loved that we got a lot of scenes, in Chinese and then some in English. More English than Chinese, but it was a pretty good balance in that sense. It made it feel more authentic in a way. But on the flip side of all of that, you either need to be a fast reader to catch the dialogue or be fluent in Chinese. There were times where I had to pause the movie on Disney Plus to catch what was being said. Yeah, it wasn't that big of a deal because I was watching it on Disney Plus. But if I was watching it in theaters, I felt like I would have probably missed some things. Because the dialogue and thus the subtitles kind of go pretty fast. So if you're not a fast reader, it could be a challenge to keep track of what's being said. But with it being on Disney Plus now and, on physical media, it's a lot easier to do because you can just pause and read the subtitles and then hit play. Yeah, it does make it feel a little disjointed at times, but whatever. I do enjoy it, though, that they used quite a bit of Chinese in this as well as English. So, the 10 Rings. Now, I'm not talking about the criminal organization, the Ten Rings. I am talking about the actual rings themselves. The big rings that live on the arms. They play such a huge role in this movie, right? And I feel like the movie doesn't do a great job of explaining the actual rings. Like, they give immense power, they give immortality, but what exactly are their powers? Because I don't really know. And why and how do they change allegiance from Wenwu to Shang-Chi? Why did the color change from blue to orange? When that happened? Why was Wong able to sense the rings when Shang-Chi used them once? He uses them once, and Wong is like, we need to talk about this. But no one sensed it when Wu was using it for like 1,000 years. Seriously? Shang-Chi uses them once, guys, once. And Wong is like, we gotta get on top of this. Wenwu is using them for 1,000 years and nobody is the wiser about it. What is that about? I don't know. I feel like there's so many more questions about the rings, and I feel like the movie could have taken the time to explain more, considering we have and the Legend of the Ten Rings in the title. Like, yeah, we got Shang-Chi. He's in this movie a lot. He's great. But the Legend of the Ten Rings, not so much. They didn't do a very good job of explaining it. Now, of course, maybe I'm missing something. And if I am, please let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if they really truly did address everything about the Ten Rings in the movie and I just missed it somewhere. I'm really curious. Let me know in the comments down below. But, yeah. The family dynamics were a lot of fun to see. Now, we got to see Shang-Chi's relationships with his mother Li, his sister Xialing, and his father Wenwu, but we also get to see, Katy's relationship with her mother and her grandmother, and yeah, it's brief, but, we can kind of understand it a little bit. We also get to see Shang-Chi's relationship with Katy's family. Like, that was so much fun. And then we get to see Shang-Chi and Xialing's relationship with their aunt. Yeah. I think having so many different family dynamics could be a giant mess, but I think the movie does a good job of establishing the different familial dynamics. Yeah. But speaking of Shang-Chi and Katy, I really did enjoy their friendship. The way they have each other's back. Like, he protected her on the bus. She protected him by going to China with him. The way he saved her from falling off the building and the way she saved him by shooting the arrow into the dweller into the darkness, giving him the chance to think of his next move, even though it was unrealistic that she had never shot a bow and arrow before arriving in Ta Lo the day before. Like, they arrived the day before. We see that she's training with the bow and arrow type thing. And she's getting better. But it's literally a day. Anyways, I just love, their friendship. I really hope they don't go the romantic route. I see people debating whether at the end that's a hint at a romance or not. But I really hope that they just stay friends entirely, because we don't get to see a lot of, friendships between males and females. Like, it seems like every time, we got a male and a female in a scene, we gotta, throw them together romantically. And the MCU, better than most movies, I would say, does have that balance between having, males and females being friends and only friends and never crossing that line. And I really hope that Shang-Chi and Katy are a part of that. The comedy in this movie, oh boy, it's it's either hit or miss, honestly. Like, some of the comedy really hit and a lot of it didn't. Like, I think that a lot of the comedy could have been cut out of this movie and it would have been better. But yeah, just some of the comedy was fine. A lot of it was just either really bad, really cringe, just no. We didn't need it. That's all I'm saying. Um the post-credit scenes. There's two of them. Two. Um the first one we see Wong bringing Shang-Chi and Katy into the sanctum, and they talk about the rings with Carol and Bruce. Yeah. They all have no idea what's happening with the rings. It's a fun scene where Bruce welcomes Shang-Chi and Katy to the MCU and the craziness that is the MCU. Like, it's a lot of fun. And a really fun way to sort of, plant them as the future. And I really enjoyed that. The second post-credit scene is Xialing watching a whole new crew, including women. She learned from her aunt, including women, to train in the Ten Rings location as she sits on her father's throne with the Ten Rings behind her. What does this mean? That's all I want to know. What does this mean? Like, is she going to be a villain in the future? Or is she just continuing her fight club but in a new location? It's really interesting trying to read into what this scene actually means, because I think it could go either way. But I really kind of hope that they don't make her a villain, because I really enjoyed her. And if she is a villain, I hope that she, like, sticks around for several movies, because, yeah. Now, time to dive into the characters in the movie. Shang-Chi. We're going to start with him, because this movie named after him. He's a great character, and I'm really looking forward to seeing, him in the future. Potentially a Shang-Chi sequel. Maybe it'll be a Shang-Chi trilogy. Maybe he'll be in some Avengers team-up type movies. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of him in the future. Wenwu. Wenwu. He's an okay villain. Like, I'm gonna compare it to Black Widow again. I think he's better than Dreykov. But, like, he starts out wanting power until he meets the love of his life, and then he gives up his quest for power. But then she dies, and he goes back to wanting power to avenge her. Like, he was threatening because of the Ten Rings, that's for sure. Like, both the organization, but mainly the rings. Yeah, I mean, he's an okay villain. Overall, looking at the villains of the MCU, I wouldn't put him, top tier MCU villains, but he is better than some of the villains that we have gotten. So, Wenwu, an okay character. Probably won't be seeing any more of him because, dead. But, yeah. Xialing. I talked about Xialing when I talked about the second post-credit scene. But she's really an interesting character, and I hope we get to see more of her, because, like, when I first watched the movie on Disney Plus Day, I was kind of like, okay, Xialing's a fine character. Like, it was very clear that they were building Shang-Chi and kind of maybe leaving everybody else sort of, as sort of supporting characters. But yeah, Xialing was really became an interesting character the longer that I sat with this movie. Um she's a character who teaches herself how to fight by watching her brother and the other members of the Ten Rings train and, all that. So she's like teaching herself how to do it. And she's teaching herself how to be better at it than they are. But because she's a girl, she's overlooked constantly by her father. And then she goes out and she creates this fight club empire that literally has, all sorts of people coming to fight and everything like that. Like, she builds a life for herself, outside of the shadow of her father and her brother. And yeah, I really enjoy her. Like, and I really, really hope we get to see more of her. And I think we will, because the little tag at the end of the movie, the 10 rings will return. Um, Now, Lee. Lee was just a character who, despite getting screen time, we don't really know much about her as a character. And it seemed more that she only existed as a catalyst to the events of present day. And that kind of makes me sad, because there's a story there. Like, she's the guardian of Ta Lo. And then she gets kicked out of Ta Lo because she chooses to be with Wenwu. And I just, I don't know. I wish we got to know her a little bit more. Um, but yeah, she just kind of seemed to be a character that was a catalyst, for events of present day. And that makes me sad, because I really did kind of like her. Now, Nan, a good character who, helps explain the world of Ta Lo to Shang-Chi and Xialing, and frankly to us as the audience. And then she, trains Shang-Chi to fight like his mother, because Shang-Chi realizes that the only person who was able to defeat his father in a way was his mother. So, she teaches him how to fight like his mother. Um, yeah. Like, it seems that in many ways she's, you know, I don't know what to call her. Like, because she's not really the guardian, because she's inside of Ta Lo versus outside of Ta Lo, but like, she's high ranking in Ta Lo. Like, she might be the highest ranking in Ta Lo. And yeah, I really hope that we get to see more of her, because we got to see quite a bit of her, but we still didn't get to see a lot of her. Um, and I think she's a very, very good character. Um, Katy. So, Katy provides half of the comic relief. I will get to who provides the other half of comic relief in a minute. But ultimately, Katy, she had quite a bit of screen time. She got some character development, but ultimately, she was just sort of the best friend, going with Shang-Chi on his hero quest. Like, she was sort of the epitome of sidekick in a way. And I don't know. Like, I wish that she got a little more to do, but at the same time, I feel like she did the right amount of things to do, I guess. That doesn't make sense. But yeah, it's a weird situation with Katy, because I feel like she could have had more to do, but also she did enough. So, yeah, essentially Katy's just like the sidekick in this whole thing. Um Now on to the other half of comic relief, Trevor. Remember Trevor from Iron Man 3? The Mandarin? Yeah. He's back, obviously. I think there was no way to have this movie without at least a hint of him. Um, yeah. I mean, did he need as much screen time as he got? No, not really. Um, but, he was the other half of the comic relief. And frankly, he was the only one that could understand Morris, who essentially is able to help Shang-Chi, Xialing, and Katy, and Trevor get to Ta Lo before Wenwu does. Yeah, and despite having quite a bit of screen time, he doesn't really do much besides crack jokes and understand Morris. But frankly, I think we could have had, you know, any of the other characters understand Morris and thus help them get into Ta Lo. But whatever, Trevor was there. We tied up that thread from Iron Man 3. That's all I got to say. Morris. Now, I had to include Morris. So Morris is the faceless creature that, like I said before, helps, Xialing and Shang-Chi and Katy get to Ta Lo before Wenwu does. He was cute. He was fun. That's it. I was debating whether to include him, but he was cute and he was fun, so I included him. Back to people that I just don't know why I included at all, but Death Dealer. Now, Death Dealer was a minor character, but did seem like a threat. Therefore, I approve. Razor Fist. Another member of the Ten Rings. He was cool during the first bus sequence. When he was like sawing the bus in half and everything like that. That was cool. But then after that, I think we should have just left him. Honestly. Like, he definitely wasn't as cool as Death Dealer. I think we could have just had Death Dealer be the main, I guess antagonist. Yeah. Razor Fist was cool. First bus sequence. After that, Soo and John. So, Soo and John are Shang-Chi and Katy's friends in San Francisco. They're very minor characters. They only have a scene at the beginning and a scene at the end. In the beginning, they're like Sean and Katy and, Soo and John. They're just hanging out, chatting like friends do, grabbing drinks, all of that. And then at the end, they're like, hold on. Sean, your name is Shang-Chi. Your father has these extremely powerful rings. You saved a mythical land on the back of a dragon. Like, they're just sort of the epitome of, your normal, average citizens who are just like, huh? Like, what? That doesn't make sense. Yeah, I think, they were minor characters, but they served their purpose. They had the right amount of screen time. And I don't know. I really liked them. Maybe they'll show up again. Maybe they won't. I mean, I won't be sad if they don't, but I won't complain if they do. Yeah. Now, for the cameo characters. So, first we have Emil Blonsky, aka Abomination. Yeah. Like, he's really only seen, in the fight ring with Wong, and he's working with Wong, question mark? I don't know. But, we're connecting Incredible Hulk into the MCU in more ways, so yay, I guess. Yeah, he doesn't really do much. There's not much to say, but Wong does knock him out, so that works. Speaking of Wong, Wong's in this movie. I was really hoping that Wong would have more of a main role in this movie, considering his specialty is mystic arts and we're dealing with the magical weapon in the 10 rings. But he really only showed up fighting Blonsky and then in the post-credit scene, so Wong was in this movie more than any of the other cameos, but still kind of wish he would have been a main character. Or at least somewhat of a main character, or have more screen time or something. Like, I love Wong. And he wasn't really in this movie. And I'm really sad about that. Carol. Yeah, she's there in the post-credit scene. She informed us that she's never seen anything like the 10 rings before in space. That's all. I mean, she was there. She served, I guess, a purpose. I don't know. I guess just to inform us that there's nothing like the 10 rings in space. Okay. Then we got Bruce. Now, also similarly to Carol, he's in the post-credit scene. He said, scientifically, smartness. He doesn't understand the rings. He doesn't know what they are. He doesn't know what they do. I'm like, welcome to the club, Bruce. I don't know what they do either. But, yeah, he doesn't understand the rings. But, his post-credit scene does provide some interesting little details. It's post-Endgame. Shang-Chi is post-Endgame. And we see human Bruce instead of Professor Hulk, like we did in Endgame. His arm, while still in the sling, does seem to be, I guess, less burned, less broken, all that. But yeah, he's human Bruce, not Professor Hulk, in a post-Endgame world. Are we going to learn answers? Maybe in She-Hulk? Hopefully, because that was really confusing. Maybe we will see it in She-Hulk, because, we're getting, Bruce Banner in She-Hulk. So, maybe we'll get answers as to why he's in human form instead of Professor Hulk. I don't know. But it was odd. But, whatever. Overall thoughts, I really enjoyed Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite Marvel movie, but it was enjoyable. It felt different than other Marvel movies, so that was a good thing. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know. Did you like Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings? Do you think it could have been better? Let me know what you thought of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in the comments down below. And if you like this video, leave a like, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you can be notified when I upload my latest videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye, guys!